gathered here today to talk about everyone's favorite preacher.
I'm Tulip.
I am Cassidy.
And welcome. We're talking about season 1, episode 4.
We are back on the good news.
So, season 1, episode 4, entitled Monster Swamp. It originally released on June 19th of this year. And what did you think?
You know, I forgot what my rating system was. It was something like, it was a 3.7 out of 5 terrified prostitutes running in the night. Something like that. Women of the night, ladies of the night.
That is really funny.
Oh, that's my good, by the way. It's just, I love 80s horror, like Nightmare on Elm Street and all those kind of things. And this episode started out with, a half-naked girl running through town and then running through a field. And then it was, half a dozen half-naked girls. And who the hell runs in Uggs?
Sister, you're already giving it up, man.
Lace up a pair of trainers, for God's sake.
So I gave it 3 Cheeto-coated hands out of 5.
Oh.
Yeah. And I will talk about my rationale for that rating. Good.
Because that's funny. You and I are always like...
We're a little bit opposite.
Yeah. And, I had this episode rated much, much higher in the beginning, and it lagged in the middle. So I'm just... Yeah, that was mine. So we'll get into that. But
okay.
Do you have our numbers?
So I was able to find them, and it had 1.14 million viewers on the same day. Which is down from episode 3. Episode 3 was 1.75 million viewers. I found that as well. But in Live Plus 3, so those are live views.
Right.
In Live Plus 3 with DVR, it actually has been averaging 3.3 million in Live Plus 3. So, that's about half of where the Walking Dead season finale was.
That's pretty respectable.
For the first season. So,
right.
And I mean, there are certainly shows I suspect that would be glad to have numbers like that. But I keep hoping that the numbers are going to go up because I want to see this continue.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. We were just talking before the show, and I do know that the season finale has currently aired, and it did have higher numbers than I think all of the other episodes. So
Hooray!
Yeah, and we're already confirmed for season 2. So
yeah, so we're definitely gonna get season 2.
Right.
I think too that maybe there are even better numbers in Live Plus 7, but I couldn't find the Live Plus 7 numbers for this episode. So,
okay.
So the title was Monster Swamp. Where do you think that came from? What do you think we're looking at?
I think it smacked you on the forehead with, the whole swamp thing. The previously referred to Lady of the Night winds up falling down a sinkhole.
Right.
Yeah, is that what we're calling it, sinkhole?
Yeah, and I think that's totally right. That's one of the things that I read into it as well.
Right. And then, of course, I think in an earlier episode, Sheriff Root referred to the whole world as a monster swamp or something to that effect.
He did. It was when he was talking about... he was talking after his conversation with DeBlanc and Fiore, and the story that he told them about those kids who were taken by the peanut seller at the circus or something like that. I can't remember if that was his comment to Fiore and DeBlanc or if it was his comment to Eugene. But he made that comment in the last episode.
Right. So I think we are seeing the monster swamp in both places, in figuratively and literally.
Yeah. And the only other thing, so I totally was like, yeah, the field the girl died in. And then the other thing that I thought was, Jesse's world is kind of turning into a swamp. So,
how so?
It's just getting more and more complicated. And I kept watching him go through the whole, I'm going to do something really big. I'm going to do something really big. And I'm thinking, Jesse, think about the consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we did, we're getting a little more into that. The every action has a reaction
And
But
I'm very interested to see, and I know we'll talk about this too,
right.
what his
And
really big thing from this episode, what consequence it has.
yeah, yeah, it's gonna be major considering
Who was
who.
involved?
Right, right.
Yeah.
One of my favorite characters, only because he's so creepy and he's Freddy Krueger.
I think of Freddy Krueger every time I see him now. We're talking about Odin Quincannon for anyone who needs to catch up.
Okay, and so we decided that, or you decided that our featured character would be Sheriff Root, and looking at his IMDb, holy good God.
I know, he's got tons of stuff, right?
He was what is his name? Warren in There's Something About Mary.
Right? Which is one of the fathers, right?
No,
it was her brother.
It was her
It was her
brother.
developmentally delayed brother.
Oh my goodness. Like I mean, I kind of see it now, but talk about method acting. This guy, and some of his other credits, like I haven't watched Deadwood or anything like that,
Oh,
but
Deadwood's pretty cool. I mean, I haven't seen the whole thing, but I can remember like listening to it from the bathtub and going, "Nick, are you watching Deadwood again?" Because it was just one string of swear words after the other. It kind of sounded like me when I'm on a tear.
he's one of those actors where, like, I first saw him in Preacher and I was like, I know him from something.
Right.
And it turns out, like, you know him from, like,
From
one
everything.
of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, like, CSI and gosh, Chasing Ghosts, Grey's Anatomy, just there's Longmire. He's in so much. But like one episode. He's that guy.
Did you read his bio that he wrote on IMDb?
I did. And
it was really funny.
Yeah.
I just want to point out to people it's worth looking at because it's obvious that he wrote it and it was really funny.
Right. He says as a rule he never refers to himself as the third person.
Yes.
You can't technically write your own IMDb bio, but he did. So there you go. And his bio on the AMC's website is pretty much copy paste.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that I thought were really cool. His first job in film was he was a dialect coach in the movie Backdraft.
Yes, but he also did play like paramedic number 1 or something.
Oh, did he really? Oh,
Yeah.
I missed that completely. That's hilarious. So he's also really good friends with Wes Craven. And he was in New Nightmare.
Yes, I did see that.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't for the life of me place him in, and that's the thing about him is like
he blends in.
He really gets into his character.
Yeah.
And from this point on, I'm probably going to have a hard time like knowing what he's in. If I go back and watch Deadwood, I'm going to
be Sheriff Root.
that's Sheriff Root.
So a couple other credits I wanted to mention because I thought they were really cool. He was in Being John Malkovich, which is a great movie, really kind of bizarre. TV credits include Seinfeld, X-Files, Justified, American Horror Story, and one of my all-time favorites, 6 Feet Under.
On my list.
And he also writes music and records with a band in LA called the Sacred Cowboys. And he describes them as an Americana band.
See, and he is very, like, for as broad as his acting chops are, he is very, like, old westerny.
Right, he's
like,
very much Sheriff Root.
Yeah, he is, and he's in Deadwood and Justified and just, all of these other, like, kind of iconic westerny type roles. And he does talk about, and if you read his Q&A on AMC, it does have some spoilers for further episodes. I think episode
so be
5
warned.
6. Yeah. But he does talk about, he did read the comics. He started reading the comics 3 years ago because this is when...
Really?
It was when they were toying around with the idea of doing this. And so he read the comics and was like, how are they ever going to bring this to TV? And so he did read the comics and he is kind of a fan of the comics. So
very cool.
Yeah. And he's got some really good references in the the question is, how do you compare this show to some of your other work in the Western realm, most notably Deadwood? And he talks about it touches on this show touches on the saint of the killer William Muni story and Judas Priest suicides.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of those, but he's really got some good insight on his character. So he did his research.
So I will talk a little bit more about the Saint of all killers when it's appropriate. We're not quite there yet, and we're not there in this particular episode yet. I can tell people without spoiling too much because we've already kind of gotten a little bit of Eugene's background.
Mm-hmm.
So Eugene is modeled after those two kids who tried to kill themselves based on, according to them, because of some Judas Priest music that they'd listened to. So that's, what else is involved in Eugene's story? Who knows? I think it's still kind of up in the air, but, they did make the reference that he tried to shoot himself with a shotgun, so I don't feel like I'm giving that away.
No. And, in his Q&A, he talked about his character. He thinks he sees this character as a nasty character. And so far, in episode 4 that we're on, I haven't seen him. I mean, he is kind of outwardly unnecessarily mean, but you and I were just talking about, sometimes you see the worst of society day after day after day, and it just eats away at your soul. And then he comes home and he has to live with, his son who attempted suicide.
And his catatonic wife.
And he talks about his character, really he goes to church every week. He really he's seeking the good, and he wasn't finding it in Jesse. I mean, Jesse was barely even phoning it in.
Well, he knows Jesse's history too,
right? And it's Jesse's father and all that. So yeah, he's I've always said he's kind of a sympathetic character, in that he deals with so much.
And it's funny because I don't see him, and maybe this will change as we get further into this season, but I don't see him as someone who's mean. I see him as someone who is so hidebound, so attached to the rules, that it may come off as callous or it may come off as indifferent, but it's really him sticking to the by the book.
Right.
Like I was thinking about when he said to Jesse, "I'll take the victim's complaint when she comes forward and gives an official complaint."
Right.
I see answers like that all the time in law enforcement.
Right.
And it's just people being very careful and sticking to the book.
Right.
Because they don't want to leave any wiggle room for anything that might be second guessed later on.
And again, I just see him as defeated at every turn.
Right.
I mean, he just... everywhere he looks, it's a monster swamp.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
In his own life as well as his professional life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we get to the Gospel, Book of Job, and Revelations, I just wanted to hit on the author and the director real quick. So the author was a woman named Sarah Goodman, and she had a bunch of credits that, to be honest with you, I didn't recognize. Obviously, Preacher. A series called Outsiders, which I'm not familiar with. A series called Rake, which one of our other characters, and I want to say it was Eugene, had acted in Rake. Gossip Girl, which I'm familiar with, but I haven't watched. And then To Love and Die and Reunion. And I'm really not familiar with any of those other than Gossip Girl and Preacher.
Right.
The director was a guy named Craig Zisk. And he's also got a bunch of executive producer credits as well. But listen to his pedigree. Weeds, United States of Terra, Nurse Jackie, The Good Wife, The Office. He also has several Emmy nods for The Larry Sanders Show and for his work on Weeds. So a really good pedigree for the crew that worked on this time.
That's exactly the word I was thinking of. Yeah,
so,
I don't recognize much from her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was talking with Brian. We did a one-off podcast for Biters this week. And, there's just so much good TV right now that you really have to be selective about what you watch.
Good TV, good movies.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I would love to read more books. I really should get into some audiobooks, but there's just so much out there, that's moving books, picture books
Right.
that I don't have the time between everything that I watch. And yeah, I watch a lot of fluff. I'm not a huge fan of reality TV, but we do watch Big Brother and Celebrity Big Brother UK, not the US, the UK versions, because the UK versions are much naughtier.
Okay, I love you. I'm not judging.
But I don't watch like Mob Wives or the Kardashians or anything like that. But so right now, Celebrity Big Brother UK is on, and between it and its companion show, that's 2 hours, 6 nights a week, and 1 hour the seventh night. So yeah, that's already a lot of TV. So I have a lot of shows that I'm like 1 to 6 seasons behind on. So yeah.
There's too much going on in life. You have to choose what you're going to watch. Right Absolutely. Now, for me, it's Walking Dead and Preacher,
Yeah. Yeah, and we are in an election year, so yes. I do inundate myself
the news, with I do too.
The news cycle.
I did want to say one totally unrelated thing because you brought up books. I wanted to let you know that I got somebody else hooked on the Newsflesh series.
Oh, sweet.
So for anybody who loves zombies, like certain people on this podcast do, my sister included, not just me, there's a woman named Mira Grant who wrote a series called the Newsflesh Trilogy, and it is really one of the best zombie books I've ever read. Zombie series I've ever read.
It's like a zombie political thriller, post-apocalyptic love story. Yeah, it's great.
And it sounds like the sequel is coming out, or has it already come out?
I believe it has already come out.
Oh, I'm going to have to look for it then to add it to my virtual stack of books to read.
I was just going to say, it's on my list. You're going to get that a lot from me.
Yeah.
West Wing, it's on my list.
So what's your good news for the night?
My good news is the start of the episode. Like I said, I am a fan of 80s horror, 80s, really just about any 80s movie. I kind of grew up in the 80s. I was very young, but I did grow up. Shush.
Hey, that sounds like my house.
Somebody's either breaking in or she needs to go outside. It could be one or the other. I mean,
isn't that what the significant other is for?
He's probably out there watching West Wing. So I absolutely love the way the show opened up. We opened up with one of the Toadvine whorehouse ladies of the night running through an empty street. And, this being Preacher, you're like, what could possibly be going on? And then, she runs and she tries to hide in a culvert, and there's 2 other girls hiding there, and she starts running in the field, and another girl's running next to her, and someone, did they drive up or run up and shoots the girl next to her, and you're like, oh my God, what is going on?
And I totally thought she was dead.
Yeah. And I believe we are meant to see that, and so I think it was Clive that went and cornered the girl. Lacey is her name. Cornered Lacey, and she's like, all right, you got me. And he shoots her, and it's a paintball. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, oh, have we really sunk this low? We're hunting prostitutes for sport with paintballs.
I totally did have a Butcher Baker moment.
Oh, for those of you who don't know, Butcher Baker is Alaska's most famous serial killer to date. I'm sure we have a few more that have yet to be discovered.
Hopefully not.
There's an average of 3 active in every state.
Oh my God. Only you would know that statistic.
we do have a lot of places to hide and dispose of bodies. I'm just saying.
So we digress again, but the Butcher Baker is essentially a guy who would kidnap prostitutes, take them in his private plane out to rural areas in Alaska, and hunt them to death.
Yep.
So yeah, it kind of felt like a little Butcher Baker moment there.
Yeah, yeah. And there's an episode of Criminal Minds that kind of starts out like this. And yeah, it's very 80s horror where you have this beautiful young scantily clad woman running in the night. And I always flash back to Nightmare on Elm Street because that to this day wakes me up in the night. That Freddy Krueger is the only thing that still scares me as an adult. And so that was my good for the episode. I absolutely love the way this episode opened up. It kind of got my juices going, and then we'll get into the bad, but it kind of lagged in the middle. But the end was solid. So my good was really the beginning, and we'll talk about the end a little later.
So I'm going to add to your good. It's not
Yeah.
my good, but I want to add to it because there were a couple of things that I noticed that were kind of cool. So did you see the school bus going by in the background when she was running?
I did on like my third pass.
And I totally thought, oh my God, is that Linus?
And it didn't even register with me because again, I go back to Nightmare on Elm Street and it was always high school kids and it registered, but not as much as it probably should have.
So my other question is, did you see her run past the new mascot, the prairie dog?
The prairie dog, yes.
Yeah. And then the very last thing is the guy who was kind of passed out, seated in the alleyway. Was that Walter or was that Tulip's uncle?
I don't know. I thought he was kind of in costume too, almost like a prairie dog without its head.
Oh
but
no, he was wearing a red shirt and he had crazy like salt and pepper hair and he looked like he was a black man and I think it was Tulip's uncle who has a drinking problem.
Okay. He looked a little larger, he kind of looked like the mascot size. So
Yeah, he looked a little pudgy.
That totally could have been Tulip's uncle. That would have made a lot of sense. We have not seen him conscious in 4 episodes.
Right.
So that would be a nice callback.
So my good was the backstory on Tulip. It wasn't very much, but when she was talking with Mosey and she disclosed that her mother had been one of the prostitutes at the Toadvine whorehouse.
Yep.
That kind of made me just reflect on who Tulip is and how crafty and devious Tulip is.
Right.
And then it also made me wonder if she has any idea who her dad is.
Yeah.
And if that will be something that is significant down the road.
Yeah. I didn't even think of that. I did notice that she did refer back to her mom.
Yeah. So it was a very small thing, but I thought that was a super cool thing.
That is cool. So what was your good?
Well, that was my good.
Oh, that was
just
your
that
good.
Little bit of Tulip backstory. I really enjoyed that.
Ah. There was one thing. The scene after Tulip assaults Cassidy thinking it was Clive.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the question... Oh, go ahead.
For the Biters fans, you everyone remembers Porch Dick? My new one is Dick Witch.
Oh, that is so funny.
I am trying to find a way to use that at least once a day.
Oh my God, that's so funny. That sounds like a Scottish insult for a certain presidential candidate.
That's funny.
Who shall remain unnamed.
That person may or may not have a hand smaller than 85% of men. New study today, just FYI. I consume a ton of media. It's ridiculous. And these stupid little facts just stick. I need to start smoking what Cassidy was smoking. Do you remember what Cassidy was smoking?
Oh, God, it was insulation.
Attic insulation.
Yes. Yes.
So we're drinking shite from the
leaking out of the back of the AC.
Yeah, and smoking attic insulation.
I'm gonna hang out with Cassidy rather and let him be my bartender.
Yeah, but, he did get some legit drugs in this episode. Is he really trying to help the men from the government or heaven now? I guess we're calling them. Are we calling them angels yet?
I don't think they're angels.
Okay.
I think
They're
more...
reclamation agents
Yeah,
from
there
heaven.
you go. They're repo men from heaven. Um, I still think, and I might be wrong, but I still think that Jesse's primary motive is to protect, or not Jesse,
Cassidy.
Cassidy's primary motive is to protect Jesse.
I really do too. I think he is kind of using the I'm drawing a blank on their names. The angel
Fiore and
and
DeBlanc.
DeBlanc, yes. I really think that he's found a way to scam money out of them, but he really does have Jesse's interest at heart because he really would like them to try the lullaby once more rather than the chainsaw. So
Well, and he paid for the Lady of the Night and got drugs. I mean, Cassidy had a really good haul.
he did up until Tulip beat him and threw him out a window. And of course, that importance of that, she finds out he's a vampire.
And so the question that I have is, she has seen him before. Like, she saw him when they both showed up at the church in the first episode in the back pews.
Mm-hmm.
But is this the first interaction that they've really had?
I think so, because she doesn't really interact with very many people besides the those who hang out at the Toadvine whorehouse and Jesse. I mean, she really doesn't have much to say to the sheriff or anybody else. So I really think this is their first interaction of consequence.
Well, and she didn't really act like she knew who Cassidy was. She kept saying, "Oh, hang in there, mister. Don't die on me, mister." Or
Yep.
whatever she was saying. So I was like, this is the first significant interaction she's had with Cassidy.
Yeah, he was just some guy at the whorehouse and, or in town that...
What a way to meet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's your Book of Job?
My Book of Job is the whole middle of the episode just lagged for me. I had a hard time keeping attention after our intro. We followed Emily's story a little bit in that she and the mayor apparently kind of have a thing that she doesn't want to admit to.
I was going to say, did you notice it's not even like a friend with benefits?
No.
It's just benefits.
Yeah,
it's a babysitter with benefits.
Yeah, instead of wanting cash,
Yeah.
he just had to be out before the kids got up.
Right.
And he called one of her kids Timmy or Tommy. He called him by the wrong name.
No. It was Jesse who called the kid by the wrong name. And he called the kid by the right name.
That's right.
Yeah.
I wrote down Timmy/Tommy. I'm like, somebody like important in Emily's life is not remembering the kid's name, and that was really sad to me.
Well, it's sad that it's Jesse, who she obviously has a passionate thing for.
Pines for that man.
And then the mayor is like, he totally has every little detail down.
Yeah, he cleans her house. Yeah, I mean, just he's a great guy, and he obviously, and she just wants really nothing to do with him except for use him for whatever she needs the money.
The occasional relief, shall we say.
Right. And we saw a flashback of Jesse smoking with Tulip and his dad.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that was another part of Tulip's backstory. I just love that little girl's face. I just loved it. Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, I'm going over, all the stuff that we saw. We flashed back to when John, Jesse's dad, goes to Quincannon, and they have an interaction, and John leaves with Odin saying, renounce him, one of those. And Jesse's stealing an ashtray, which when we flash forward, he's smoking and puts out his cigarette in the same ashtray.
Yes.
So we had a lot of little things that this seemed like a middle book to me, where they're setting a bunch of stuff up for either the next episode or upcoming episodes, or we got a lot of backstory in this episode 4. We had the interaction with Cassidy and Fiora and DeBlanc. The interaction with at Toadvine, Quincannon and the mayor,
Right.
which that scene ending, ugh,
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. It was
yeah,
pretty awful and pretty awesome all at the same time.
yeah. Like I didn't even know what to think of that. Like,
Well, so, we're specifically referring to Quincannon urinating into the mayor's briefcase, and I just think, in our culture that's like the ultimate sign of disrespect.
yeah, yeah. I don't even know where to go with that.
Well, so he's really kind of putting the mayor in his place and showing the mayor that his place is not very high on the food chain.
Right. I mean, Quincannon seems to run the town. The mayor was talking about how local tax revenues have decreased 58% in 10 years, and how he wanted Quincannon to talk to these Green Acres guys
Right.
and form a partnership and things like that. And that's when Quincannon urinates in his briefcase, and the mayor just takes it.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how this guy ever got elected. I mean, he gets assaulted for turning the Red Chiefs. Is that what it was?
Savages.
Savages, yeah, into the prairie dogs, and Emily tosses him around like a wet blanket, and now Quincannon's shoving him around. I mean, how did this guy ever get elected?
Well, maybe the voter turnout in Anvil is pretty poor.
I would have to imagine. Yeah. Yeah. So,
So I think my book of Job was real similar to yours. I just felt, people have gotten taken to task for calling some of the Walking Dead episodes filler episodes. In fact, one of the podcast hosts who I really like got taken to task on Twitter by Michael Cudlitz. But, I think that this was more of a filler episode. And I kind of felt like, okay, it's there to push the story along.
Yep.
But did it need to be a whole episode?
well, and I think that they could have put each of these little scenes, they could have broadened them out and put them into more other episodes. I would have liked to have seen more. I would have liked a little bit more elaboration on, I have this strange curiosity about Fiora and DeBlanc. The only other time we have seen them eating is DeBlanc, I think, ate his tea bag out of his tea.
That's right. Well, and now he's eating Cheetos.
Right.
So
And he wanted a burger.
right, but
like,
that was so funny because it's like he is so sucked into media and so easily manipulated by media. I mean, he watches the burger commercial and then he's like,
I
want a hamburger.
And he settles for Cheetos at the vending machine.
But it's really funny how he's kind of already kind of fit in and been sucked into 21st century media,
Right. But who eats tea bags? I mean, is that actually a thing? Am I missing something there? Because I mean, I understand that you can consume them. They are herbs, but
oh my god. So do you want me to politically incorrect version of who eats tea bags? That's probably too vulgar for this podcast.
No thanks, Dan Savage.
I don't, I mean, I've certainly seen people put a tea bag in their mouth, a real tea bag, and suck the fluid out of it, the brewed tea. But I can honestly say I don't think I've seen someone eat a tea bag.
Yeah, that's just, I keep flashing back to that every time I see him like do something a little off. I'm wondering, is that a thing? Like, I mean, it may be some form of pica that he has. And for those who don't know, pica is eating non-food items.
So maybe like Edgar in
Men in Black.
In Men in Black, he's
Sugar
just
water.
having a hard time fitting into his human suit. You know?
That is a good possibility.
So what were your revelations about this? Oh, one more thing I actually want to say about Book of Job. So also, I was kind of bugged that they didn't touch on the cowboy again. And
Yes.
maybe I'm just being impatient.
Yeah.
But that was kind of there in my head too.
Okay, and did you see a sign in this episode? I did not see
Oh
the
no, I
sign.
don't think we
Yeah.
got a church sign this time.
No, I feel cheated. Like, if this is going to be a filler episode, and I'm not saying that it was, I'm not, but at least give me a sign.
And we're not talking about anything cosmic or monumental, just a church sign.
Yeah, a literal sign.
Okay, so what was your revelation about this episode?
So my revelation is probably the same one as yours. It's the end scene with Quinn Cannon. Well, first, I find it interesting that Jesse and Quinn Cannon are they miniatures? Is that what they are? I want to say they're like dioramas or models or whatever.
Oh,
The
right.
Alamo?
And
Yeah,
what was that a diorama of exactly? Was
the
it
Alamo.
That's what I thought
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, because they were talking about David Bowie. Or no, not Bowie. Bowie knives.
Jim Bowie, yeah.
Jim Bowie, yes.
Yeah.
They were talking about that and the Alamo. And so, they're sitting there painting little tiny figurines and making this big old model of the Alamo. And I just find it interesting that that's their interaction,
Well, I was
like,
going to say, and I also find it quite honestly just incredibly interesting that they've maintained an interaction.
and it has nothing to do with anything other than maybe the love of painting small figurines.
Unless there's more to it that we're not seeing, because this is just the first that we're seeing that they have a history.
Right. And so, I don't know if Jesse planned it this way, but he sort of used it as an in to talk to Quinn Cannon about coming back to the church.
Right.
Because in an earlier scene, we see Emily and Jesse talking about
Needing leadership.
And how many people attend church
Right.
regularly, and how they can get their attendance up and things like that, and they're going to raffle off a TV,
But they also need a prominent community leader.
right, and who's more prominent that they don't already have coming than
Right.
Quinn Cannon, and so Jesse offers Quinn Cannon, and I'm going to get this 20 hectares.
So that is a measurement of land.
Right.
But I can't honestly tell you that I know offhand what that's a measurement of.
I believe it's 50 acres.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's quite a plot of land. And it's the biggest plot of land in Anvil that Quinn Cannon doesn't own. And so he offers up these, and I think it's pronounced hectares.
And so how exactly can Jesse offer that up? Does he own it? Has it been
It was his
donated to the
father's.
church? It was his father's. Okay.
Yeah.
I missed that.
Yeah, the biggest plot of land Anvil Quinn Cannon doesn't own. Yeah, he said something to the effect of, "You've always wanted my father's land," or something like that.
Ah, okay.
And it of course piques Quinn Cannon's interest, and he promises Quinn Cannon that if he doesn't leave the church on Sunday a devout Christian, then he can have the land. And of course, Quinn Cannon being Quinn Cannon, he's no problem. I'm a dick witch. So,
But here we go, right? With the prominent with you will leave church a devout Christian.
right.
He didn't say anything about you will leave church as a devout Christian when he was speaking with the word. What did he say? He said believe.
Yeah.
So believe in what?
So at the end of the episode, he kind of starts to take the entire congregation to task about
Right.
how they've strayed from the Word of God.
Right.
And nobody further so than Quinn Cannon, and he singles him out, and Quinn Cannon gets up and he's about to leave, and Jesse keeps asking him, "Will you serve God? Will you serve God?" And so Quinn Cannon is no, I won't. And finally Jesse, with the power of the word, commands him to serve God. And Quinn Cannon instantly snaps, and it's like, of course, yes, I will, And for me, I actually half expected Quinn Cannon to be immune. Like, yeah, I don't know what in me told me that, like, somehow, like, Quinn Cannon was going to be just this, like, such a vile creature that he was going to be immune to the command, and he wasn't. It was just like everyone else. He flipped like a switch. And so that was, where we kind of left, aside from one small scene.
Okay, but here's the question I have. What does it mean to serve God? And
Right,
which God?
right. And now we've discovered that there's always repercussions.
Right.
So what could be the repercussions of commanding Quincannon to serve God? And
He
things are
could
taken
totally become a zealot,
right, right, and things are taken so literally.
Right.
Show her your heart or open
Right.
your
Open
heart.
your heart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that this just it can't end well. I mean, Quincannon is such a vile character. And to command, I mean, even with the purest intentions of commanding him serve God, it can't end well.
So I think the thing that Jesse still has not realized, and we talked about this when we were talking about what would you do if you had the power of the word, he still has not realized, A, there are tremendous consequences for whatever you command, and B, you have to be so incredibly narrow and specific about what you're asking for. I mean, people like Quincannon, money is God.
Right,
So, I mean, he could interpret it as serve money, serve greed,
right.
serve profit, you
Well,
know?
and I wouldn't put it past him to be thinking of himself as a god,
Right.
and he already does serve himself. So,
So this is just giving him permission to run roughshod even more.
right, and we've seen it before with the bus driver
Linus.
Linus, where forget her. Well, he's going to meet her again,
Right.
So there's ways around these things, and like you said, you have to be so narrow and specific in your command that. Yeah, I'm interested to see where Serve God is going.
And I will tell you, if there's any way to hedge on something like that, the universe is going to figure out a way.
Absolutely. I mean, Quincannon may have been absent from church because his god is Satan,
Right. I mean, it could be anybody. It could be anything.
Right.
We don't know what Quincannon's motivations aside from money and profit are at this point. Well, and sadism. I mean, he certainly seems to get off on hurting people and killing animals and
Yeah, listening to the killing of
yeah.
animals, and yeah, it was interesting to me in when he showed up in the very beginning of the episode. I mean, I understand the field that the girls were running through was Quincannon property, and
Right, but his condolences were, you don't run through property at midnight or whatever, and you guys stop your roughhousing.
yeah, just be a little bit more careful.
Yeah.
And of course Tulip is appalled because
Right.
there was a girl hanging by her ankles covered in
Tulip is the only one who's appalled.
right. Even
Even Mosey.
Mosey is just kind of like,
Well,
whatever.
it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, I maybe Clive paid extra, for the damages.
So that was kind of my revelation, and it's another small thing, but I realized that Clive, who in the last episode was picking on the same prostitute, I mean, he was basically like, okay,
Lacey.
I got shut down by Tulip at the gaming table, so I'm gonna take it out on Lacey.
Right.
Clive is also the guy that Donnie broke his
Broke
nose.
his arm.
Broke
Oh,
his
yeah,
nose.
broke his nose.
So, Clive is kind of that classic, I got
Bully.
abused
He's-
at work, so
right.
I'm going to go home and hit my wife, and my wife is going to spank my kid, and my kid is going to kick the dog.
Right.
I mean, he's totally that guy.
He is middle management when it comes to bullies.
He's not, yeah, he's barely middle management. Donnie's kind of middle management when it comes to bullies.
And he was very prominently absent from this episode.
Yeah.
That the excuse was that he called in sick.
Right.
Yeah. I thought that was weird.
Well, and it could be something as simple as the actor had something else scheduled.
Right.
But we don't really know. Or it could be a vehicle for something else to happen down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe because I think one of the last episodes we saw him, he had a gun in his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. That could have he could have been
Maybe
six
that just
away.
totally, yeah, that
Yeah,
totally freaked him out.
yeah.
Okay, I have to tell you something really funny. So I'm just kind of looking through the word, and when the mayor comes, no, it's Jesse. When Jesse comes over to Emily's house around the beginning of the episode, and
I
Emily's in the
know he's
bathroom, and
going.
her kid is like, she's pooping. I remember growing up with you, and my first thought was, oh my God, my little sister would totally have done that.
I will still do that,
I kind of figured.
especially if it's your preacher at the door.
Oh my God, that's so funny. What else did you see? Just kind of looking through the
So
word.
before I get into my special little numbers, which there weren't very
Oh,
many,
good, you found some. Okay,
I did
I
find
was
a
kind of
couple.
looking for Easter eggs, and I didn't do very well.
Yeah, this like I said, this episode lagged a lot, and there really wasn't a lot that I saw. I mean, maybe I missed it, but I absolutely loved their little shrine to Lacey. Did you see
Yes.
that?
Wasn't
It
there like a baton, and then there was what was the CD? Was it a
okay,
Bad Company CD?
okay. So there was a stuffed animal, a rose, I think Swedish fish, the candy, a bowl of Swedish fish.
Hey, those are some of my favorite candies.
Yeah, Swedish fish, pretty good. A Brooks and Dunn CD. Now,
Brooks and Dunn.
yeah, I'm
Okay.
not a Brooks and Dunn fan, so I didn't catch the which CD it was, but it was Brooks and Dunn CD. A baton. I think there were a pile of scrunchies. I paused it and I was like, okay, are those thongs or scrunchies?
And they could
we
easily have been either.
we settled on scrunchies, because a good lady of the night needs a way to tie back her hair.
There you go.
And my favorite, that her timer. It was like an egg timer. With 60 minutes. It even
Your
had
appointment's
Lacey
done.
written on it. Yeah. Her time. How. Her little shrine, and they include her timer. That is just weird.
It was funny.
I love it.
Yeah.
And then the her friend, one of the girls, was reading from a book, and the quote was, but much revenue comes by the strength of the ox. And I don't know what that's from. I
It
didn't.
certainly sounds biblical.
Yeah, I didn't Google it enough. It was a very strange quote to read at the memorial for a prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, those were my little tiny Easter eggs. I just thought those were funny and interesting. The only numbers that I found were verbal, and it was when Emily and Jesse were talking about getting a flat screen TV to raffle off, and he said that the Best Buy was open till 11, and they were talking about how many parishioners they had, and it was 22. And so 11 and 22 were, and I actually came up with 22 before I was like, oh yeah, they said 11 o'clock too. So, I didn't find much in the way of like Psalms or Deuteronomy or anything like that with reference to 22, but according to BibleStudy.org,
Thank you, BibleStudy.org. You have no idea what you're doing.
it is so specific. Like there's like 2 pages here. I'm gonna narrow it down, but there are 2 pages of the meaning of the number 22 in the Bible, which I don't know if this, it could be me reading more into it than, it could be total conjecture, but the number 22, which is double 11, which symbolizes disorder and chaos, can represent a concentration of disorganization. Jaborum?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Okay.
But I said at the beginning, Jesse's life is falling apart. Jesse's life is a monster swamp.
Right. So the Hebrew alphabet is made up of 22 letters, which are used to compose the Word of God.
Oh my God. There is no way that's a coincidence. That is so cool.
Well, there is so much numerology associated with at least the number 22, but there's so much numerology in the Bible that BibleStudy.org has broken down.
Well, and I think it has to do with the Kabbalah, with the Jewish Kabbalah, but I could be wrong.
Well, I mean, the scripture, when, let's see, the word of, because they talk about,
Which the scripture would not be scripture's New Testament.
right, this is the Hebrew alphabet is made up of 22
Right.
letters. But they talk about, the word of God is called a lamp because it's the light, and it's found 264 times in scripture. And when divided, 264 divided by 12 is 22.
Oh my
So, I mean,
god.
it totally, and there's some New Testament about the light of God, and there were exactly 22,000 levities consecrated to serve. Yeah, there's some dates with the 22nd, and I mean, there's just a ton. God created 22 things in 6 days of the creation. There's a bunch of 22, and of course 11 is double 22. So like
Half of 22, yeah.
but those are the only numbers that I could find in the episode
Wow.
that we hadn't seen previously because we keep seeing the hotel room and everything. But yeah, the Hebrew alphabet being made up of 22 letters that composes the word of God was just
Yeah, I mean, that's...
right on the nose.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
22 parishioners.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So we end the episode kind of on
Oh,
a
yes.
cliffhanger, of course.
This is awesome.
Right. So my curiosity with Fior and DeBlanc right now also is it an Angel starter kit that they just start out with, because they were buried in that case, in that trunk, and they seem to keep having all the stuff over again. So is it just is it like lives in a game? Do you just you have to like go back to your body and you pick up your backpack, or like,
well, but
how does
they've kept the same hotel room. So
right?
the thing that I think of that they didn't walk away with was the coffee can.
But they keep having the coffee can. They have
Right.
it.
So I mean I'm saying, you know, most of the things, those are probably things that were just in the same hotel, you know, that were stored
Yeah.
in the hotel room, but you're right. I mean, Cassie
Cass-
dismembered them. So
and
how did
yeah,
they get the coffee can?
he buried him under the tree in that
Right.
trunk. And so yeah, so anyway, in this trunk, in the Angel starter kit, the reclamation agent from heaven starter kit, comes this crazy old phone that starts ringing, and they both just freeze and stare at this phone.
Well, and you know that's their bosses from heaven. That's got to
Right.
be their bosses.
They had talked about earlier in the episode
Yeah,
that they
don't
need
pick that up.
Yeah, they need to report. And he's like, no, we're not even supposed to be here, you know? So we end the episode with both of them just staring motionless at this phone ringing. So I'm sure that's where we will pick up in the next episode.
They also talked a little more about what... They didn't really say what the entity is, but they hinted a little more around kind of what's in Jesse.
Right.
So I think we're going to find out some more about that too.
Right. And in our featured character, Sheriff Root, in his interview with AMC, he does refer to the entity by, I'm sure it's name in...
I suspect you're right. I haven't seen the interview, but it does have, at least in the comic books, it has a name.
Right. So he does refer to it by its name. So I now know the name. I wasn't looking for that spoiler, but I found it.
So it'll be interesting to see if they stick with that. And it sounds like, especially if Sheriff Root is referring to it, or if the gentleman who plays Sheriff Root is referring to it, they're probably going to stick with that as part of the keeping to the comic book.
Right. Because it's, not a dirty name like Arseface or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Although they've managed to pass off Arseface.
Yes.
And I do think that the meat woman may happen, just veiled.
Oh.
I think that there are ways that they can imply it without actually showing it.
Yeah.
So, how's that for a spoiler? Now everybody has to listen to the podcast and to continue to watch the show to get that figured out.
Exactly. That and the dang cowboy.
Yes.
Yeah. So, looks like for the next episode, the South will rise again. Not the South. South will rise again. Looks
So
like we may see some more of the cowboy.
the other thing that I think about when I think of that is the Civil War, people continuing to hold on to the rebellion, and what is Donnie's favorite thing to do? He's a Civil War reenactor.
Oh.
So I wonder if we'll see some of that.
Yeah. See, again, I think I'm reading way too much into stuff. I'm thinking, something will rise. And I think in the last episode, I think it was, where at the very, very
No,
end.
the last episode was the possibilities, because it was the
Okay.
possibilities.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we end on that vent coming up from underground, and so I'm thinking something will rise again, but I may be reading too much into it at this point. I think it may be a little more literal too, with you reminding all that Donnie's a Civil War reenactor.
Well, and here's the thing. Preacher is so random and so bizarre, which is one of the charms, that it could be anything or all of those things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or none of them.
Right. So I guess until next week.
Until next week.
This is Tulip signing out.
And this is Cassidy calling everyone a dick witch.
And going off to smoke some more insulation.
Some acid insulation.
All right. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
I left his body in the woods, and I took off running south. I left his body